think we're live. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. For those that don't know, my name's Rob. I've got our technical director from the Digital Maze, Mr. Nelson, with me as well. And yeah, we're going to talk about all things AI. Once again, we are a little bit obsessed with AI at the Digital Maze at the moment. So as always, as we go through the presentations, I'm going to give mine first. I'm then going to hand over to Liam. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as we go. And just by way of introduction, for those that don't know the Digital Maze, we are a full-service digital marketing agency. We're based in the Midlands. The business is very much split between sort of three different specialisms. One of those is the organic side, so the SEO. The other side is paid media. So we've got a paid media team specializing in Google Ads, Bing Ads, social media advertising. And then we've got the technical team as well, which Liam spearheads, focusing on all things from brochure websites all the way to quite complex e-commerce websites as well. And that obviously enables us to give the full service to our customers. We've got a team of just shy of 40. I think it's 38 working full time for us now. So yeah, that is us in a nutshell. And I'm going to jump right in. So my presentation is more around the use of AI and just some use cases as well. So these webinars are primarily aimed at marketing managers or business owners who lead marketing teams. So the idea is we encourage the use of AI to our teams to make people more efficient and things like that. But likewise, if you are part of a marketing team as well, the content of this webinar should be very useful for you as well, just to give you some ideas of different use cases for AI and how you can use it to improve your own workflows. And then Liam's presentation, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liam, is more around what's coming up over the course of this year in terms of different tools you're probably already using right now that are looking to integrate AI or already have AI integrated with them. So hopefully there's some quick wins for you here and you can improve your workflow right off the bat. So yes, without further ado, I shall jump straight into my presentation. Are we all seeing that? Liam, can you use that okay, mate?
All good, mate, yeah.
Lovely. So a bit about me. So my name is Rob, one of the directors here at the Digital Maze. Been in agency leadership for sort of 10 plus years now. My background is actually in programming. So I'm a software engineer by trade, did software engineering at university. That's where my degree is. However, I have not touched any programming for probably over 10 years at this point, but that's my background. I'm very data driven. I'm very passionate about working with other marketing leaders. So anyone, leading a marketing team, marketing directors, marketing managers. I'm very passionate about how we can improve workflows, how we can make people more efficient, how we can do more in less time effectively, and obviously exploring how AI can impact marketing overall. So we've all heard about ChatGPT, and I'm sure you all can't log into LinkedIn right now without seeing Muppets like me talking about it 24/7 and riding the wave. And I'm very sorry about that. I can't really help it. I am a little bit obsessed with AI. I know Liam is actually even more obsessed than I am about AI, purely because it's having such an impact on my personal workflows. And I know as a business, we're utilizing it to some extent as well to improve how we're working as well. And that is then having a knock-on effect to our customers. So yeah, a little bit obsessed. Apologies. I'm probably not going to stop. But there we go. The question is how seriously are people taking it? There is a lot of talk about AI at the moment. You can't really go anywhere without not hearing about it. But sometimes I wonder if that is just because of the industry I'm in. If you take yourself out of our industry, you take yourself out of sort of tech or digital, are people taking it seriously? And I think a really graph to visualize this is this one. The amount of days it took these platforms to reach 1 million users. So you can see ChatGPT is only 5 days it took to reach 1 million users, which, even comparing to things like Instagram and Spotify, Facebook, Twitter, which we know are mainstays right now, is quite incredible. And for me, it just goes to show, how much of an impact AI and ChatGPT in particular has had so far. And I think it's almost a prediction. It's like looking into the future in terms of where I think it's going to be a mainstay going forward, personally. But for me, AI is not about doing jobs for you, but what it is about is doing more, better, in less time. And I think that is the key message for today. And this presentation is very much focused on ChatGPT because it is the most accessible tool. I'm sure you've all had a little play with it in some way, shape, or form. It is free, and you can do a lot for the free version, but it's also 20 quid for the premium version. And in my opinion, very much well worth it. And a little caution before we get started into the different use cases. And if you're on the last webinar, you all have heard Mr. Barker say similar things in terms of, don't blindly trust AI. The information can often be inaccurate and it does have its limitations. And in our opinion, it should be used as a means to assist your usual strategic thinking. So the first use case I want to talk about is content creation. So when I talk about content creation, I don't necessarily mean just spitting out blog post after blog post, but I mean any form of content creation, emails, social media posts, blog articles, script writing, storytelling, ad copywriting, pretty much anything where words on a page is applicable, which is fine for most content. And it's certainly fine to create a starting place in terms of, can you structure a blog post for me? Can you provide the right titles? Can you just get me started by writing the first paragraph? These are all different prompts that I'd really recommend, because what I wouldn't recommend is just taking what AI gives you and plonking it on your website, but actually using it to generate the first paragraph and just things to get you started is a really useful exercise. But the question is, what about when it comes to Google? What are they saying about it? And is it safe to use on your website? Generally, Google are saying it's fine and the appropriate use of AI or automation is not against their guidelines. But effectively, it will always penalize poor quality content. So any content that you take directly from an AI tool and dump straight into your website without looking at it, without making any changes, without injecting your own ideas, your own personality, your own stories, your own takeaways, is likely going to be fairly poor quality content, or at least very generic in terms of there's already going to be something out there given the same sorts of facts as what AI can generate. So it's not going to be helpful. And actually, probably long term, speaking to the guys that we have here at the Digital Maze, I think long term, whilst it's not directly being penalized now, I think long term it probably will be penalized unless you are prepared to just use AI as a means to getting you started with your content. And again, slightly taking a little bit from Wayne's presentation, if you're on last webinar, but there is nothing more powerful than your own ideas. I think when writing any content, what I personally find compelling is listening to an individual's opinion, an individual's takeaway, an expert in particular fields who have got lots of experience, who can give their own opinions, their own ideas based on their experience. And that's something that AI can't replicate. AI cannot replicate experience. It cannot replicate personal ideas. It cannot replicate personal creativity. And I think that is what's going to stand out from the rest going forward. So yeah, in content creation, it can be used and it can save a hell of a lot of time. I personally use it to help me with social media posts, writing emails, rewriting certain things in different tones and so on. But ultimately, at the core of what I am taking from that is my own ideas and my own thoughts and my own opinions. But what it is doing is allowing me to do it in a much faster rate, effectively. Use case number 2 is ideas or ideation and planning. So I've just plonked a few examples on here. So I try to put myself in the shoes of somebody running a soft furnishings e-commerce business, and I would like to start digital PR. And just by way of getting started, and just, I'm not very creative and I want some ideas just to get me started, I simply asked ChatGPT to give me 5 creative ideas that have some humor to it, have the ability to go viral. What that ability is, I'm not sure what it's based on, and could gain press coverage. So obviously I've asked it for in table format, and they've given me some decent ideas, in fairness. Host a fashion show, create a series of humorous photos and short videos. And I know the guys who run our creative area of our business would certainly use these ideas as a base, and I'm sure that iterate on them and come up with something much better. But as a base, it's really, really good. But we can also get quite conversational, and we can go one further. So I started a conversation with ChatGPT. I said, right, I like those ideas, but actually I've only got a budget of, say, £3,000. And again, it's taken their previous input and it's some more quaffable ideas, should we say, some ideas that might not cost so much money. And then again, from that, I've asked it to narrow it down once again to target people with a certain pain point. So I've suggested that I want to target people who are really keen on keeping their furniture clean when they've got pets. And again, it's given me some really good ideas that could go viral, would potentially cost me less than £3,000 to create, and also appeal to the point of keeping furniture clean when they have pets. So it's a really powerful tool. And again, I'm not suggesting you take these, even though they have been narrowed down, and run with them. I'm saying that when you've got people with creative brains, this can really inject some speed into that and fast forward that process and get some base ideas out there. And again, just to hammer home, it's not about taking what ChatGPT can give you, running with it, it's doing more and better in less time. So just the very process, and I've witnessed this myself, the very process of generating those initial ideas can take hours. Sitting in a room, starting from ground zero, and you need those ideas that you sort of veto before you get the ideas that you run with. And ChatGPT do that and get those early ideas in for you. And just like, this is tongue in cheek, but actually there's some truth in it. I think, running out of ideas is probably no longer valid. I think actually it's a perfect use case for ChatGPT when you are running out of ideas, when you've got a bit of mind blank, when you're lacking that creativity. It's a great way to just inject something to get the process started. And again, it all leads back to that idea of doing more in less time and being more productive, and all that has a commercial benefit ultimately. Use case number 3 is research. So various different ways of research. I know I've categorized it very broadly. There's some ideas, keyword research. So if you're in SEO and you want some ideas of keyword research, you can cluster keywords and so on. Again, I wouldn't suggest just taking what ChatGPT have done for you, but dumping this into a spreadsheet and using really SEO tools. It can save a lot of time. Channel research. So if you're putting together a marketing strategy and you're looking at different pockets of audiences that you want to appeal to, on which channels you may use to access those people, it gave me some really good answers. So young professionals, for example, they're likely to go on interest and Pinterest, Facebook, but kids more down the email marketing route and so on. So it gave some really good answers in regards to channel research. And it's also really good for persona research as well. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you guys use personas when generating marketing strategies and so on. But we do, and I certainly do. And it gave me some really good detailed personas, which covered the age of people, the gender, their pain points and so on. So again, as a means to starting that process and really understanding who your customer is and what the variety of customers you might have when you're generating that marketing strategy or marketing campaign, it provides a really, really strong starting place. And then just some bonus things. So again, social media, I personally use AI to craft social media content. I usually start with something that I've written myself and I ask it to rewrite it, and then I ask it to rewrite it again, maybe add some tone, some humor, some strap lines, whatever it might be, just to make that social media on maybe a 5 out of 10 when I've written it, to hopefully an 8 out of 10 when I've finally got the content that I want to use. Meeting efficiency. So again, I've used AI and I've used it for meetings. So I'm often asking AI to produce me meeting agendas based on the output that I want. So I might say, I'm hosting a meeting this afternoon. The output of that meeting is that we come out with the following actions, A, B, C, and D. Can you produce me an agenda? And again, it produces a really solid agenda. I might make some tweaks, I might make some adjustments, but again, in terms of making a sort of 20-minute task of producing a meeting agenda, maybe 5, maybe even 10 minutes, it does a really good job of that. And for me, every minute counts, to be frank. Setting targets, again, maybe something that you guys have not explored, but for me, again, I've tried this. So I've had the conversation with ChatGPT, which sounds really odd. I've had the conversation with ChatGPT, but I've told it some numbers. I've told it who I've got within the teams, and I've asked it to set OKRs. I've asked it to set targets, and again, it's given me some really good ideas of what we could set targets for individuals and different teams in order to help the business grow. Again, needed some tweaking, but again, open that thinking for me. Emails, I often use AI to rewrite emails, not from scratch, but maybe change the tone, make it read a little bit better. I'm not the most fantastic writer in the world. And like I said, objective setting and targets, again, OKRs is something that I've run through AI to help me get started, and workflows, just to streamline workflows, improve targeting, optimize different performance, and so on. And yeah, it's really quite limitless in what you can do. But my advice is to speak to it. Speak to it like you would a colleague. I know it sounds strange, but that's kind of the approach I take. Have a conversation with it, ask it for more context on its previous response, and so on. And you'll be amazed at what it can do to improve not only your time, but if you're interested in encouraging your team to do more in less time, it's really interesting what it can do. Again, a caution, don't blindly trust it. It has its limitations. Use it as a means to assist you. And P.S., the prompts in this presentation were fairly basic. And for me, learning prompts is where it's at. The outputs I was getting 2 months ago compared to the sorts of outputs I'm getting now is very, very different. I'm getting some really good outputs now, and that's because the prompts I'm using are much more detailed. I'm actually logging certain prompts in Google Documents, so I'll keep an eye on them, and I might need to reuse them at a later date. But just some tips. So treat AI like another person. Tell AI to assume an identity or a profession. Refine and make small changes throughout the conversation. Add context. Tell it why. That's really important. That's a really important point that I've learned. And then keep a log. As I said, I keep a log in Google Docs and Apple Notes and so on and so forth. But over time, my prompts have got more detailed, better, and that's enabled me to get better outputs effectively, which has enabled me to save more time. And we all know time is money. Also, I would recommend spending time investigating other tools. So I think Liam's actually got much more information on this than me, and Liam's much more of an authority than I am. But I'm trying almost a different tool daily at this point, and I'm just messing about, seeing what it can do. And there's some really good ones. There's some good ones that really integrate with Google Search as well, because we know ChatGPT, unless you've got access to the plugins, you can't do much in the way of getting information past, I think it's 2021 at this point in time. But there are tools out there that you can do that with. Loads of free trials as well. Grammarly have recently introduced an AI arm to their tool, which is really quite good. So yeah, my advice is to jump on Twitter, follow some AI nerds, and they're always recommending tools, and pretty much daily I'm seeing something, I'm signing up to it, I'm giving it a try. And yeah, I just find it really interesting. So some predictions from me in how I think AI will impact marketing moving forward, in my opinion, as a caveat. So I think search will become more conversational. And that means that, the fundamentals of quality content, I think, will remain paramount as it is now. I think it'll become more conversational. What I mean by that is, let's try and think of an example. Maybe instead of typing in white microwave, you might type in, I would like a white microwave that costs less than £10 a year to run via electricity, and is less than £50 and has a 2-year warranty. So more conversational. You're asking it very specific questions, and that will pull back website results. And obviously the website will have to be optimized for those conversations, but that's a story for another day. But that's kind of where I think it's going. I think it's going to become much more conversational. I think, the idea of keywords, white microwave, might become obsolete, and actually long tail, very specific queries are going to be where things are heading. I think there'll be a lot of personalized experiences. So I think websites will have the ability to personalize themselves based on what the machine has learned about you, what your preferences are, how big you want the font size, what you're looking for. I'm not sure how far that goes, but I think there's going to be no such thing as me and Liam looking at the same website and having the same experience. I think it might serve up slightly different content in slightly different ways, different products. If it's an e-commerce website, stuff that appeals to me might not be the stuff that appeals for Liam, all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to become very much more personalized. And I think we're going to have predictive search as well. And what I mean by that is, I think our devices will start to understand where we are in life and our buyer journey. So again, an example, let's say I've just moved in to a house, I think my device might know that I'm likely to be looking for a sofa or likely to be looking for a grey sofa, because 2 years ago I bought a grey sofa as well, and I tend to like grey sofas. I think it'll become like that. I think it will start to understand where we are in life, our buyer journey, what we do like, what we don't like, what we tend to search for, what we tend to speak about, and start serving up ideas and what we could search based on our preferences and what it knows about us. And I also think online and offline presence will become even more closely linked together. So yes, we know social media profiles and SEO and all that kind of thing is linked, but I think it's going to become even more closely linked. I think brand's going to play a big part as well. So brand mentions, even if they're unlinked, will become much more important. So that's kind of where I think it's going. I know Liam's got his own thoughts and feelings on that as well, which we'll talk about. And for me, it's all about right now, the use of AI is focusing on what has the best commercial outcome, which, encourage your teams to save time, accelerate marketing activity, utilize it now to get ahead of competitors, automate tasks, and all this. The bottom line to all of this is it can save a lot of time, and we know time is money, effectively, and that is my sort of approach to it right now. Is how can I use AI to save myself more time? And I do stop and think about most tasks I'm just about to do that maybe takes me half an hour, an hour. Is there anything I can ask AI to help me with or get me started with here? And 9 times out of 10, it really is getting me ahead in terms of saving time. And last but not least, you can use it to plan presentations, which is exactly what I've done here. So my prompt was, as a marketing manager, what are the best uses for AI to help my marketing team work more efficiently? I've obviously taken 2 or 3 use cases from that and developed a presentation off the back of it. Little plug. We do run our own podcast here at the Digital Maze. It's called Room 301. I'm very biased. It's very good. I would encourage you to listen to it. It's on all the available players. And we actually did an episode on AI last month. So if you are interested in hearing more about thoughts and opinions on AI, then I would highly recommend that. Thank you for listening. I'm going to do a few questions before I hand over to Liam. So let me start sharing my screen and I'll have a look what's come in. So Niels, do you have a nice easy suggestion on how to start a conversation and get used to ChatGPT? I don't know what your thoughts on this are, Liam, but for me, yes, it did feel very odd at the start. I think honestly for me, it was learning prompts, learning how to have a conversation with ChatGPT. And, if you're not, for me, Twitter is kind of the place to be if you're into AI at the minute. I follow maybe 10 different AI related accounts on Twitter, and all of those, every single day, there's a thread on top 10 prompts or top 10 tools and top 10 ways to get the best output from ChatGPT. And, 5 of those might be rubbish, but the other 5 might be pretty good. And I'm using those and I'm experimenting with those, and I'm just booking out time in my day to experiment with them. So yeah, just spending the time experimenting, and practice makes perfect ultimately.
I think just to jump in there, the thing that I find useful is if you give the AI, no matter what tool you're using, if you give it a persona. So if you are writing a presentation for marketers, then you can just start by saying, act as an expert in presentation writing across the topic of marketing, particularly digital marketing, and then go from there. It tends to give you a bit of a better output instead of being generic at the start. Would be just my input on that.
Indeed. Caroline, do you think British search could threaten human free choice with spitting out what it thinks we want to see? Oh, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer that. I suppose it depends how good it gets. It depends how accurate it becomes. If it's super accurate, then I suppose most people would find it a useful tool. If it's suggesting something that really does make sense to you and you really are going to enjoy, and it's based on actual preferences, then yes. But if it's trying to sway our thinking or persuade us to think a different way, or if it's trying to make us buy something that we wouldn't ordinarily buy, so it's almost used as a marketing tactic rather than a helpful tactic, then yeah, I think that could be quite dangerous. And that's not the way I'd like to see it go. I'd like to see it become not biased towards any particular tool, products, political party, whatever it might be. and be very much based on personal preference, actually understanding what our personal preference is. That's where I'd like to see it go, but I can't say where it's going to go. Who knows? Are there any situations where you'd actually not advise to use AI? I mean, bottom line is that I wouldn't advise taking what it says as gospel. I've said that a couple of times now. Where you actually would not advise using AI. I'm not sure. I think anywhere where you don't want to be generic is, I mean, right now I'd feel very uncomfortable if I was to use AI to generate me a sales pitch, for example, because for me, a sales situation is very much about pointing out our point of difference, how we'd apply our strategy to our client challenges and so on. I think there's a risk of things becoming generic and not standing out, and you not standing out as a business or individual by using AI too much. So one example would probably be a sales situation. I certainly wouldn't want to use it to help sell ourselves because it doesn't know anything about us. We've got our own point of difference. We've got our own way of articulating that. What's your thoughts on that, Liam?
I think everything at this moment in time, everything to do with AI, you will always need to take with a pinch of salt, and you will always need to check over the answer before you do it. So if you're not skilled in a particular area and you're using, and you have kind of no knowledge of that area, using AI to do something in that area, then I would probably not advise to do that. And then without getting too technical, it also depends on what AI tool you're using and what version of that. So if you're using ChatGPT 3.5, you're going to get a lesser quality result than if you're using GPT-4. And if you were, using Bing Chat as well, they do work slightly differently. So with Bing Chat, you need to be careful because it will incorporate the language model, but also the actual internet as well. So based on what you're using and what your kind of skill set is and your knowledge is on, I would always treat it with a pinch of salt and just check it over first, and then use it to enhance what you're already doing. And I wouldn't advise using it for anything that you know nothing about. It is good for learning new things. I don't know if you want to learn a new language, whether that be French, German, Spanish, or learning like the basics of code and things like that. It will give you a good start from that side of things. I've seen people using it for like legal letters and things like that. Probably wouldn't advise doing that right now as well.
Yeah, legal. Yeah, very good point.
I'm not sure I trust the AI just yet on that side of things.
Cool. Do you want to jump into yours then, Liam?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just share my screen. I think I had a couple of messages during Rob's talk at the beginning. I think there might have been a bit of an issue with my microphone potentially. So hopefully that's all good now.
Seems it.
Cool. So just jumping straight into it, what I'm going to cover is recent updates in AI, the next kind of few months in terms of the AI roadmap, and how that's going to potentially impact the world of marketing and everything else. So quick intro to me. Just like Rob, I've been running agencies for over 10 years now. My background is also in software engineering, but unlike Rob, I kind of stuck to it. So that's where my area of expertise is. It's all around software and tech. It's where my passion is, and everything to do with the web and AI is one of my favorite things to research at the minute, and how we can use it to be more efficient at work, at home, and how it's going to potentially change the next few years of our lives and onwards, really. So jumping straight into it, I just thought I'd do a quick recap for anyone who isn't aware of what's been happening. So around January, February this year, something called ChatGPT got announced. There was quite a lot of press around it, and subsequently, this is where the kind of the more mainstream topic of AI conversation started. AI has actually existed for a number of years. It's just with the launch of ChatGPT 3 in particular, it's gotten a lot better, and there are a lot more users for it going forward. So as a result of that, what's starting to happen now is lots of applications that we use on a daily basis are integrating with AI. So things like Monday.com, which is a tool that we use across all departments in the business, I think a couple of weeks ago, announced that they are going to incorporate AI into that software. I've had a bit of a play around with it, and it's going to be useful for kind of just saving time, really, and those repetitive tasks of creating boards and things like that. The obvious ones, which I think everybody on this webinar will use, is things like Google Drive and Office. They will be, and I think some have already, integrated AI into those workflows so that you can use ChatGPT and others just to kind of help with content writing emails, like Rob said, spreadsheet formulas and things like that. The one that I'm particularly waiting for is Slack. So we use that in the digital maze, and it will be useful to summarize very lengthy posts and just kind of tell you what the crux of what's been said is, and again help with turning bullet points into more meaningful sentences and things like that. And I think the main reason I've put this slide in is, if you have a think about all of the different software, cloud-based software, desktop software that you're using, there's a strong chance that they will have either released kind of some form of AI integration, or they're working on it. And 9 times out of 10, it probably will be useful to your workflow in terms of speeding things up and helping you out. So it's definitely worth having a look at what you're using at the minute and what their own product roadmap looks like. So more importantly, what I'm going to kind of focus on over the next kind of 10 minutes or so is, what does the rest of the year look like? So one of the big things is GPT-4 will be, at the minute it's released a kind of a limited version of itself, and you have to have a paid account to access that version. But behind the scenes, they are working on plugin updates. And I think at the minute there are around 100 official plugins that are being tested with GPT-4. And what that will allow it to do is connect GPT-4 to the internet properly. So there will be a web browser plugin. There'll be a Zapier plugin, which will be kind of unlock a lot of doors to third-party softwares for it to action things. You can see there's open tables. So it will become a lot more like a personal assistant. You will ask it to do things for you, and it will achieve those results, whether that's using Kayak to check for flights or car rentals, hotels, that kind of thing, open table for booking restaurant tables. And there are literally, like I said, there's about 100 of them, which cover off most use cases. And more importantly, and probably more interestingly, with GPT-4, there is what's called an API, which allows developers to utilize the power of the AI. At the minute, this is kind of behind closed doors, and most developers can't access it. But when that gets released, it will kind of open the door to thousands and hundreds of thousands of third-party applications being built, interfacing with ChatGPT's AI to create a number of different applications and use cases. So, at the minute, OpenAI, who are the company behind GPT, have closed the door to a select few developers and companies to access the API, which is what's being used to develop these tools. But at some point, they're going to be available to all developers to build a lot of wonderful and probably some weird applications using the AI models. So that's definitely something to look out for later on this year. And combined with that, so I've not touched much on search engines yet in this webinar, but Bing is, they've done it the best in terms of integrating AI. They do actually own quite a large chunk of ChatGPT, so it's easier for them to do it. But you can see in terms of their search engine results, you can either choose to search normally or use chat. If you start being a bit more conversational, like in this example, asking it what the best American fridge freezer brands are, you'll see it will answer the questions, but it uses an internet source to do that. So obviously that's going to link into the organic search results and how it is kind of picking the best website to pull that information from. But you can also see underneath that, they're starting to link in Bing ads, Microsoft ads, should I say, with the results. Sometimes this is in a shopping format like it is now, but other times some of these results that are listed do have a very small little ad next to them, which is referenced at the bottom when searching for information. So if you wanted to have a look at what the internet is going to look like and how AI is going to be over the next few months, I would definitely have a look at Bing because they're kind of doing it the best right now. And I'm going to talk about Google a little bit later on. But before I do that, just on the subject of Google and their AI tool called Bard, had a lot of bad press, wasn't very good, especially when compared to ChatGPT. And you can see at the minute, it's very just kind of, you put an input in, it gives you an output, very similar to ChatGPT. It's very different to Bing Chat at the minute. And they have been releasing a few updates for Bard. It has got slightly better, but it is still quite a long way off what ChatGPT is right now. And then just moving on, thought I'd just mention Apple. So they've been very tight-lipped in the world of AI. Obviously, they have the Siri platform, which is probably one of the best voice assistants. Worth putting in the diary the first week of June. I think it's from the 3rd or 4th of June. I think it's the 4th of June to the 9th. They have their Worldwide Developer Conference, and it's highly likely and anticipated that they are going to announce their AI plan. So yeah, stay tuned for that, because again, anything that Apple does usually gets a lot of noise, generally brings the kind of the wider world into the conversation, and probably will start generating a little bit more noise kind of outside of the tech and marketing world around the subject of AI. So just to kind of finish off with what's coming up this year, it's kind of my opinions and thoughts on how this is going to impact kind of user behavior and marketing going forwards. So I've already mentioned Bing Chat, and I think in terms of integrating AI with a search engine, so far they have done it the best, which does pay me to say it because I've never been a huge fan of Microsoft. But ultimately, the way that they are doing it is the best right now. And they are doing lots and lots of behind-the-scenes testing, tweaks, and changes. It's highly likely if I put this search in again, or this kind of chat in again in a couple of weeks' time, the results will look different. They're doing a lot of A/B testing to work out what works best, but I think also what makes them the most amount of money, particularly from the ad results. So that's something to keep an eye on. And I think more and more users will probably be moving to or using Bing Chat a little bit more over the coming months. Their market share has grown massively since February. So it's definitely worth having a look at, firstly, using Bing if you've never used it before or you've not used it in a while. And also, again, just thinking about in terms of what you're doing, paid search, maybe putting a bit of budget over to Microsoft Ads and seeing what that can do there. I think this will probably lead to a change in behavior over the kind of medium term, which I would probably book it very loosely at the minute at 1 to 3 years. As Rob said, chat and search is going to become a bit more conversational. Instead of just putting, white American fridge freezer or cheap white American fridge freezer, I think it's going to be asking the AI their opinion on what's the best and what's the best for my particular use case and scenario, and it will turn into a bit more of a conversation with the results being presented, something like this. Then moving back over to Google. So as I said, their version of GPT, Bard, isn't the best. They've tried to improve it, but they did panic, I think about 6 weeks ago now. And they've assembled a bit of a team, created a new project called Project Maggie, I think it's pronounced. And ultimately their goal here is to create a new AI-powered search engine, with the main aim being more of a conversation. But I think they've said this as well, they want the transactions to happen more through Google. So I don't know if you've used things like Google Flights or anything like that. when you're booking things like flights and hotel rooms and things like that, Google are going to want you to transact through Google and not through a website. So this particular project is definitely one to keep an eye on. When more information is released, it's definitely important that you are kind of aware of what's going on and when things are going to be released, because with it being Google and they still do have the biggest market share, it is likely that when this is announced, it will make a big splash and start again to change users' behavior, get a little bit more mainstream. And yeah, I think the thing to think about here is if Google wants to start pushing transactions through Google, the only way you're going to get your website into the mix there is by connecting it through an API. So that is something to start thinking about in terms of like, what is your current website built on in terms of the framework? Is it WordPress, Shopify, Magento, things like that? And start thinking about what work you can put into in the next few months, so that when this does get released, you can kind of try and plug your data set into this particular search engine, so that you don't lose out on any revenue. But like I say, that is a little bit hypothetical. They are keeping a bit of the information behind closed doors, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. So just as a quick summary, like Rob said, Twitter is probably the best place right now to kind of keep up to date with AI. But just treat it with a bit of caution, because there are people on there that will just create a thread of information that'll be a bit nonsense, and yeah, kind of lead you down a garden path that you don't want to go down. But yeah, it's useful to, you know, if you use Monday.com in your business, follow them on Twitter just so that you can keep up to date with their product announcements and when things are going to be released. Wait for Apple's announcement early June just to see if they mention anything about AI. I'll be very surprised if they don't. Follow the updates with Google Maggie and GPT plugins that are going to be released in the next few months, and then think about the technology that your site is currently on, because it's likely that will need some kind of development work to integrate with GPT-4 plugins or the search engines, and depending on how that kind of roadmap goes. So I'm going to stop there because I went on a little bit longer than I thought. And maybe get some questions if we've got time.
Most useful AI tool?
Try not to do a politician's answer. Depending on the use case, I think if I'm wanting to debug some code or get a starting point for code, I will use GPT-4. I think conversationally, if you're thinking of the world of content, the GPT-4 model is better. I would definitely recommend getting GPT Plus to use 4 over 3. It's a little bit slower, but you get a much better quality of result. But if you need something that has more recent data, then at the minute Bing Chat is the best place to go, because it will integrate and it will search websites to get that information for you. And even better than that, it will tell you the source of that information so you can check it out.
Yeah. Just to have my opinion, there's a tool called Writersonic, which I know Liam recommended to me, but for me, who's less technical, more just general productivity, it integrates with Chrome, so it's a Chrome plugin effectively. But everywhere you go on the internet, so if you're responding to a LinkedIn comment, replying to an email in Gmail, or typing away in a Google Doc, searching on Google, wherever you are, it effectively integrates AI for you. So it can ask you to generate a reply to a tweet, you can generate a reply to LinkedIn whilst you're on those native websites. So it sort of puts every website on steroids a little bit, so to speak. I haven't actually got the premium version yet. It's quite expensive, but the free trial I really enjoyed using. So
I think just on that note, when obviously the GPT-4 plugin gets more widely released, there'll be a lot more tools out there that do those kind of things. But Writersonic is good.
The last question. I work with freelancers. How can I tell that things being sent to me, so copy, is AI generated?
Again, there's definitely a couple of websites out there. I think there's one with a Chrome extension that you can use. I think it might be called, just give me 1 second.
Writer? Effectively, Googling AI plagiarism checker will give you about 20 websites.
Yeah, copy leaks, that was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, so there's a couple of copy leaks which I've used. Again, it doesn't always get it right, but it's definitely a place to just double check. And you know, if it does spit out that it was all AI written content, then definitely I'd have a chat with them, especially if you're paying them to write content for you.
Any last orders?
I think someone's typing. Saskia's typing. Oh, I think she stopped.
She stopped. She had enough of us.
Maybe I put the pressure on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed what myself and Liam took you through. Recordings will be going out via email and on YouTube and whatnot. Feel free to connect with myself or Liam on LinkedIn. Website is thedigitalmaze.com. If you need any help with digital marketing, you know where we are. And hopefully see you on the next webinar. We do plan to run these monthly. Well, we are running these monthly. We don't plan to. So yeah, really appreciate your time. I know everyone's busy. So yeah, taking up half an hour or better yet, 45 minutes on your Thursday morning. We are very grateful. So thank you all. Take care. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys. See you later.